turning chilly for many. Scattered showers in the west. Let's take a look at the details. Showers slowly easing this evening with dry and clear spells for most. It'll remain rather windy and gusty, especially over the coast and hills, turning rather chilly after sunset too. A mostly dry evening in the southeast, although the odd shower is possible along southern coast. Winds either easing and temperatures falling under clear skies. Showers continuing this evening, heavy at times, particularly in the west. There will still be dry, clear spells for most and turning chilly for all. Mostly dry with some clear spells across the Midlands, with the odd isolated light shower possible. The winds will slowly ease and more clear spells will develop, allowing temperatures to fall away. Strong and rather blustery winds will continue this evening, with further scattered showers spreading from the west, these heavy at times. There'll also be plenty of dry and clear spells too. Scattered, locally heavy showers will persist across Scotland, especially in the west. These will be brought in on strong, blustery winds. There'll also be dry and clear spells for all. Clear spells and scattered showers across Northern Ireland, some of the showers heavy at times. Brisk, gusty winds will slowly ease, turning chilly under the clear skies and easing winds. Showers easing for most, but persisting in the northwest. Winds also easing, allowing a chilly night for many, especially in the south. And that is how the weather is shaping up overnight and into tomorrow morning.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christie's. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Good evening, welcome along to Neil Oliver Live on GB News TV and on your radio. Neil's on holiday this week, so you've got me, Emily Carver, with you for the next 2 hours. We've got a busy show coming up. As you may have noticed, it's been a rather busy couple of days as well in the political world. We'll be asking if the departure of Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng and Liz Truss's rock-bottom polling means it's game over for her and the Conservative Party. And while the Bank of England has warned that interest rates will continue to rise, experts say we could be heading for a significant fall in house prices. Would that be such a bad thing? We'll talk that one over as well. And we'll also be discussing the latest Just Stop Oil protest, which involved activists hurling soup at the famous Sunflowers painting by Van Gogh. And also, I think Extinction Rebellion and whatnot have been at it in London as well too, painting the Met Police HQ yellow, so the activists are very much out and about this weekend. We'll be discussing all that and more with my wonderful panellists, Nick Tyrone and Lord Taylor of Warwick, plus a Great Britain, of course, and some autumn cocktail tasting to lift our spirits. I'm looking forward to that. But first, an update on the latest news with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Emily. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. The Governor of the Bank of England is warning that interest rate increases could be bigger than previously thought. Speaking in Washington, Andrew Bailey said a stronger response may be needed to fight inflation. The central bank is set to announce its next monetary policy decision on November the 3rd. Investors are widely expecting another hike in the base rate.
The MPC will respond to all this news at its next meeting in just under 3 weeks from now, just after the 31st of October. This is the correct sequence, in my view. We will know the full scope of fiscal policy by then. But I repeat what I've said already. We will not hesitate to raise interest rates to meet the inflation target. And as things stand today, my best guess is that inflationary pressures will require a stronger response than we perhaps thought in August.
Those comments from Andrew Bailey come after a think tank suggested more than 5 million homes could face annual mortgage repayments of more than £5,000 by the end of 2024. Resolution Foundation says the predicted increase follows the mini-budget, which saw banks pulling deals from the market. The average 2- and 5-year fixed-term mortgage rates are now at their highest levels since 2008. The Chancellor has admitted the government went too far, too fast in its push to grow the economy. Jeremy Hunt says his focus will be stability, but difficult decisions on spending and tax will need to be made to get debt falling. He has, however, promised to protect and help struggling families and businesses as well when he sets out the government's fiscal plan at the end of the month. Well, meanwhile, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has accused the Prime Minister of grotesque chaos over her decision to sack Kwasi Kwarteng as Chancellor. Speaking at a party conference in Yorkshire and Humber, he said Liz Truss is clinging on to power. Sir Keir also says there's no precedent for what the government has done to the economy.
We need to reverse the budget in full. We need to stabilise the economy. And frankly, I don't think changing the personnel at the top of the Tory party is the change that we need in our country. We need a change of government. We need a Labour government that will restore economic credibility, have a stable and proper plan for the future, a funded plan, so this country can actually move forward again.
Footballer Mason Greenwood has been charged with attempted rape. The Manchester United forward is due to appear in court on Monday, also accused of coercive behaviour and assault. The 21-year-old was first questioned in January over the allegations after images and videos were posted online. The Crown Prosecution Service says all 3 counts relate to the same complainant. The number of people killed during a mine explosion in northern Turkey has risen to 41. 110 people were said to be working at the site when the blast occurred yesterday. 58 miners have been rescued. The country's President, Erdogan, visited the area in northern Bartın province as funerals for some of the victims were held. An investigation into the cause is underway, initial indications suggesting there was methane in the mine. Back home, hundreds of farm workers, food producers and environment activists have been marching through central London. Members of the Land Workers Alliance are calling for sustainable farming. They say the government must maintain its environmental land management subsidy schemes and protect the UK's growing standards in global trade deals. On TV, online and on DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Back now to Neil Oliver Live with Emily Carver.
What a missed opportunity. It's hard to believe that within 40 days, 10 of which were spent in national mourning, Liz Truss's political programme has imploded quite so spectacularly. Booting out Kwasi for Jeremy Hunt, a man who managed to find only 18 colleagues to support him in his own leadership campaign, is pretty much an admittance that she massively messed up and also has little idea of what to do about it. The establishment and mainstream media feel vindicated, of course they do, but it's hard to find a silver lining to what we now face. Taxes are set to rise, not fall, at a time when our economy is shrinking, not growing. And with confidence in the Prime Minister shot, there's not a hope in hell of the government getting any meaningful, let alone radical, reforms through Parliament. In other words, we can pretty much say goodbye to the economic growth we were promised. To make matters worse, a Labour victory now seems almost inevitable. For all her flaws, Liz wasn't far off in her diagnosis of much of our economic woes. The status quo isn't working and Britain can do better. What she didn't understand is that politics and communication actually matter quite a lot and that timing is everything. And now she'll be incorrectly blamed for absolutely everything that's wrong in the economy. Scapegoating Kwasi will do little to restore confidence. Now, many of us warned that ousting Boris at a time of crisis probably wasn't the best idea. Engaging in a long and drawn-out navel-gazing contest within the Tory party is a surefire way to sow division and disunity. It has, and the public have never been so disillusioned. We saw how Tory MPs, led by media outrage, disposed of Boris Johnson, the man who, again, despite all his numerous and documented flaws, managed to win an 80-seat majority, taking votes from millions who had never considered voting Conservative before. The same will happen to Liz. Like a pack of hyenas, lobby journalists and the mainstream media smell blood, and they'll make every day a living hell for the lame duck Prime Minister. Meanwhile, the Labour Party, with Keir Starmer at the helm, will get away pretty much scot-free. As it stands, all Keir Starmer has to do is breathe and he'll be handed the keys to number 10. So what happens now? Well, Truss could fight on, manage to turn things around and gain back the confidence of her own party and then the public. Someone else could take over? At this point, I'm not sure who would have a better time of it when unity is as shattered as it is. Could Boris make a comeback? While many of us thought it was wrong to oust him, sure, I'm not so sure bringing him back would do anything for the party's credibility. And I certainly don't think parachuting Rishi Sunak into the job is going to go down well with the party faithful who rejected him decisively. So there's where we are. I'm asking this evening, with Liz Truss's authority shot, is a Labour government inevitable? So there's my brief assessment. It's a little bit gloomy for those who probably would prefer a Conservative Party to be in charge. But I mean, they've made a hell of a lot of mistakes and it's not looking good for the country. So, I mean, is Keir Starmer going to be in number 10 very shortly? Keep your tweets and emails coming through all through the show. I want to know what you think. That was just my little opinion. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can also tweet me as well @gbnews, and I'll get to some of your comments later in the show. Is her authority lost? Can she get it back? Can she, keep things going and get her polling ratings back up to somewhere reasonable? It's quite a big ask from her at this moment in time, but I really don't want to see a Labour government led by Keir Starmer. So, with me tonight, the author and journalist Nick Tyrone and Lord Taylor of Warwick. Lord Taylor, do you agree with my assessment? What do you think Liz Truss has got to do now?
Well, Liz Truss gives the impression of being in office, but not in power. She is drinking in the last Chancellor saloon, definitely. But I think she can still do it,
Do you? Why?
I agree with you. We don't want Keir Starmer and his stormtroopers. They're offering nothing. She has a 75-seat majority. Labour actually agree with most of the items in the mini-budget.
I know there's an irony there, isn't there?
There is, yeah. The problem with the budget, it was very poorly presented. She's got a difficulty in sacking Kwasi Kwarteng. It's like deputy heads must roll, whereas she was linked very much. It was their policy, not just his policy. But she just needs to keep calm and cool now. Jeremy Hunt is very experienced. He's done a number of interviews today. His tone is very different. Whereas Liz and Kwasi were talking about disrupting the market and radical change, he's talking about growth and stability that will calm the market. I don't think it would be wise to have a general election because the Tories would lose. There's no doubt about that. To have another leadership contest, weeks of distraction, I think we should stick with her, let Jeremy calm things down. He, in effect, is the leader in many ways. He holds the cards. But I think he has the sort of personality and he's able to relate to people. You see, a true leader has to be a healer. And the problem with Liz is she didn't get the backbenchers around her.
Yeah,
explain.
I mean, it was an epic failure, really.
Well,
not getting your team on.
But I know the problem.
Before you then present your ideas to the public. However good your ideas are, however radical, however reforming they are, if you can't communicate them to your friends, let alone the public, then you don't stand a chance.
Well, people say that Liz Truss is more dead wood than sheerwood forest. I mean, I'm not saying that, but the point about it is that she needs to bring people with her, not just dictate to her. And that's the point. Leadership is about getting people to follow you, and that's the mistake that she's made. I think Jeremy is well respected within the parliamentary party, and he will be able to help her bring the party with her, because it's about confidence. You know, confidence is king. You need the markets to be with you, you need the backbenchers to be with you, and you need the people to be with you. Yesterday, she looked very tired and depressed, but she is, I believe, a strong leader. It just needs to come out.
I think she's a strong person. I don't.
But you grow,
your optimism about her
into leadership, Emily.
I don't know. I think some people have got it, and some
when Margaret Thatcher started.
Nick, I must let you have a word here.
Certainly.
Keir Starmer, does he just need to stand there, say nothing controversial, present a very mediocre, bland manifesto to the country, and he'll get the keys?
Well, as it stands, that's where we are. Because if you're looking at the polling, it's actually much worse for the Tories than people think. So I've had a look at, like, if you look at local polling, if you look at things like how the Tories are rated on economic competence, things that they normally have a huge lead on Labour on, and indeed Truss's own leadership polling ratings, it's not that they're bad, they are excessively dire in a sort of, you only see this. We're setting all the time.
Yeah, she's less popular than Boris Johnson was at his least popular.
And she's been a Prime Minister for less than 2 months. So that is incredible. So I think that needs to be taken into account. I think the second thing that needs to be taken into account is basically Jeremy Hunt is the de facto Prime Minister. He's completely in charge now. And he stamped his authority this morning.
Which is ludicrous, considering the fact that he came last in the leadership contest that led us to this situation. The fact that he is now essentially running the country.
He's essentially
doesn't seem very democratic, does it? But that's what she's decided to do.
That's what she's decided to do. She has handed the power to him for whatever reason. She obviously, I feel, she must have felt she had to do it. But he is completely running the show. She can't sack him, because if she gets rid of another chancellor, I mean, she's completely done then. So he can completely call the shots, and he was very much lording it. He was broadcasting that this morning everywhere, and he had his outriders. He had other MPs. It was Steve Bryan, I believe, was saying, "Oh well, Liz is like the chairman, and Jeremy is like the CEO." I mean, that tells you everything about how.
I see nothing wrong with that. It's teamwork. It's called teamwork.
I don't think that's. Here's the thing. That isn't going to work long term.
No.
It's not going to work for long term for several reasons. But
I'll give you one reason. I'll give you one reason, and then we've got to go to the break.
Okay.
Go on.
Okay. One reason is, so let's take. Jeremy's come out and said he's going to slash this, he's going to slash that, we're going to cut the defence budget. Why would Ben Wallace hang around, given that he was promised a certain budget and now that's gone? So he walks. Why would Rees-Mogg hang around if he was promised this whole economic package, which was about, cutting tax, all that's gone, so why hang around? There's no reason for anybody to hang around. She could have they could all decide very quickly, it's done, and then it's over for her.
No, we've got to be more positive. The backbenchers need to get around their leader. And we do not want Keir Starmer.
That is what's so frustrating for someone who naturally votes Conservative like myself, is that the Conservative MPs, they got their way with Boris Johnson. They ousted him. And now they don't have, the respect or the sense and the respect to the public as well to just get behind the leader. And I know it's hard when you've got the media trying to do their best. I do think this is true. I do think that lobby journalists do behave like vultures sometimes, the way they harass some of our ministers and some of our politicians.
I've got news for you. In America, the mortgage industry is tanking. The Chinese yen is falling. There's a war in Ukraine. It's not just
she's
about
gonna be,
Liz
because of this, she's going to be blamed for everything that is out of her control.
But she's not to blame for everything. We're still a great nation.
Thank you so much. We're going to have to go to the break. There's so much to talk about. We're going to talk about that a bit more later, of course. So later, we're going to be joined by one voice from the right and one from the left as we talk a little more about whether the end is in sight for the Conservative government.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live with me, Emily Carver. As we discussed before the break, it's been a traumatic 24 hours for the Tory government. Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng sacked and then replaced by Jeremy Hunt after the mini-budget 3 weeks ago was poorly received and led to turbulence in the financial markets. With Labour riding high in the polls, is this Tory administration on its last legs? I'm joined now in the studio by Charlie Rowley, a former special advisor to Michael Gove, and we also welcome Peter Edwards, the former editor of Labour List. Charlie, so is this game over for us?
No is the answer. I think what she's done over the last 24 hours is instill a chancellor who has a wealth of experience. He's been in a number of roles in government. He's a senior parliamentarian. And I think, even given the comments that he's made this morning, he's been able to reassure the party and our parliamentary backbenchers. And he will go on to do more media tomorrow. And I think what was key in what he was saying today is that when he brings forward the next fiscal budget that takes place on the 31st of October, that will be signed off by the Office of Budget Responsibility, and that will instill confidence back into the markets. And as a former health secretary, he will resuscitate the party's fortunes, inject that confidence into the markets, and will go forward.
Charlie, that sounds great, positive. I hope you're right. But the problem is I'm talking about confidence in Liz Truss, and she is the Prime Minister, even though it does look to some that Jeremy Hunt is essentially taking over that role, apart from in name anyway. So, you know, Liz Truss, it's an admittance of failure.
Well, she's had to climb down from two of her big economic policies. That's an absolute fact. You can't run away from that. We've all seen that. That's very, very public. But it takes humility and it takes leadership to recognise when something isn't working and to make the right decision, which is to U-turn, as she has done. I know everybody is fixated by those headlines of U-turns, but the economic package and the mini-budget that was put forward by Kwasi, a number of those measures will stay, so protecting people's energy bills that would have otherwise gone up to £6,000. I can't pretend that that's some sort of political masterstroke of some Houdini-esque political move. That was something that had to happen, but the government took that decision, and it should get credit for that decision. Now, obviously, a number of policy areas, or the two U-turns that have taken place, have led us into a bit of a difficult position, but it's about putting that right. It's about taking the decisive action to put it right as quickly as possible. Having a new Chancellor in place is part of that process, and I think that will be much welcomed by the Conservative backbenchers.
Charlie, I hope you're right that this is enough to get the party at least on board. That's the first step to getting the public round. Peter, so the mood in the Labour camp, everyone's feeling a bit, it's too good to be true.
The mood in the Labour camp is worry about the nation. Of course, Labour has had a good week or two in terms of headlines, and Labour appears to be doing very well in the polls, but no one wants the country to be in an economic mess. And the reason why I don't buy a lot of what Charlie said is, yes, you have a Prime Minister who's unpopular with her backbenchers and now with her members and her voters as well. But most importantly for Britain, you have a Prime Minister without an economic policy. So, yes, there's reasons for Labour to be optimistic, but there's an awful lot of reasons to be concerned about the country, especially if we're not going to have an election straight away, which I suspect we're not.
Well, I think it's hard for the country. I mean, of course, Keir Starmer is benefiting from the fact that the Truss administration has been, has been a little dodgy in its communications, let's say, of its mini-budget and the way that it was executed. It wasn't exactly what we'd expect from the government. So,
on that point, can I just say that...
You can say very quickly.
That energy bill cap, they promise it for 2 years. Labour promise it for 6 months. So the government needs to emphasise the fact they're promising more than Labour.
Yes, but I would argue, Peter, I think the problem is that a lot of people watching are looking at Labour and thinking, what have they got to offer that's different? They've basically accepted most of the mini-budget as it stood, bar a couple of the tax cuts. Yes, they did. They backed the energy package. They didn't say that they didn't, at least. They didn't come up with a proper alternative, nor have they set out some kind of agenda that's different.
Let me respond then, please. So, it was a Labour idea to have a windfall tax. That was taken by the Tories. It was not Labour's idea to scrap the OBR forecast, and the government U-turned. It was not Labour's idea to cut the top rate of tax, and the government U-turned, and so on. The Conservatives, I don't want to make everything party political, because I think we all accept we are in a national economic crisis, and the previous government did do some good things in the pandemic, like furlough. So we should be reasonable about that, putting national interest first. But the energy policies were Labour policies, and what I would regard as very unjust, and what independent forecasters say were not paid for policies, like the top rate tax cut, were right-wing, and then they were abandoned. So you have, if you like, a bit of a rump of watered-down Labour policies taken by the government, like the windfall tax, even though Jacob Rees-Mogg denied it was a windfall tax. Then you have an emergency reshuffle, and you're left with a leader without an economic policy. But I really, really don't buy at all the idea there's nothing to choose between the two parties. You have a libertarian government that has collapsed in on itself, and whatever your views about Keir Starmer, you have a party committed to social justice with a leader that has good polling on his strength and integrity.
I mean, thank you, but Charlie, I mean, I don't even understand what social justice as a term means, really, in terms of policy, besides, I imagine, more and more spending on welfare, presumably. In terms of what the government is presenting to the public, I think it's been very confusing for people, Charlie, because they thought they elected a Conservative government that, for example, would crack down on illegal immigration, would also consider the fact that people voted for Brexit because they were concerned by protection of their borders and so on. Liz Truss has given a very liberal stance towards immigration. What trust will the public have, those red wall voters who are concerned about those issues? What trust can they have in Liz?
Well, they can take comfort from the fact that, as you actually say, it's the Conservative government that in 2019 came to office with a huge majority on the back of a number of places voting for the Conservative Party for the very first time. I think we have to go back and acknowledge that those voters lent their vote to the Conservative Party, and they lent their vote because the message wasn't just about getting Brexit done, to tackle the issues that you raised, such as migration, taking back control of our money, borders and laws, but also making sure that this country can unite and level up, and investing in those areas that for too long the Labour Party had taken for granted, too long where there had been families that have been overlooked and communities undervalued that hadn't had the investment that they deserved. That was the mission that Boris Johnson led the Conservative Party to victory on, and that's one that I think, as Jeremy Hunt mentioned this morning, there's a phrase that he mentioned in one of his media interviews, going back to being a compassionate Conservative Party again. That's absolutely the right approach, because it's about looking after those communities that have been left behind and dealing with the nation's finances.
Peter, so Keir Starmer and the Labour side, what do you expect we're going to see from them in terms of any policy coming forward?
Well, we've already had a lot of policies on energy. Some of those have been taken by the government. Labour said it would keep the top rate of tax, and the Tories belatedly came out to that. And then there was the landmark announcement at Labour conference to set up a great British energy company. So I think those are all good things. One thing I'd like to see, and it's popular not just in my party, but actually among voters across the board, is rail nationalisation. And Labour people say that because of our values, but actually the government have been forced to partially deliver rail nationalisation because of pragmatism, i.e. their train operating model failed. So I think for reasons of whether higher principle or simply passenger pragmatism, let's have a commitment to railway nationalisation.
OK, so rail nationalisation, that's what we've got to look forward to with Labour, potentially. Thank you very much, Peter, for joining us this evening on Neil Oliver Live. Thank you. It's just so frustrating because, as I said in my monologue at the start, Liz Truss had a massive opportunity here. I think that parts of her diagnosis were certainly correct. We've had pretty much stagnant growth, anemic growth. We've had a very high tax burden. We've been over-regulated, I think it's fair to say. It's so frustrating now that the Labour Party can just sit back and essentially not offer anything. And what I'm worried about is that people will elect him by default, will elect Keir Starmer by default, and then will then realise just how left-wing he actually is. Because let's remember, he was happy to stand behind Corbyn, stand behind that Corbyn manifesto.
Well, we have a Labour leader who can't even define what a woman is and who expels his own members for supporting unions. I mean, it's just chaos. I mean, Keir Starmer would be out of his depth in a puddle, frankly. I think it's about communication. The government has the right policies, but it needs to communicate it more effectively. I think that message has to get home.
What do you think, Nick?
Well, so, for instance, the corporation tax cut was actually a good policy. I actually think it's very good and actually could have been sold in the right package. It was crazy to do the things that they did at the time that they were doing. I think people want to let them off because, oh, well, there's a lot of mess in the market. So, you know, internationally, it's a bad picture. But the point being is that, well, that's the backdrop that you're given. So take that into account and don't do something that's going to spook the markets. The idea of not having the OBR get involved was totally crazy. And I think the worry, for the right, I would genuinely say at this moment, you're worried about, you know, Starmer going to the left. I think the bigger worry is actually about how much does this discredit, if you like, centre-right economics. And I think that's a genuine worry that I think Conservatives, anyone on the right, should really think about, because I think the real worry is that this shifts the whole discussion way to the left on economics. And I think that's something...
Oh, yeah, I think this is terrible for those...
Corporation tax, at 25%, we're still the lowest in the G7.
Yeah.
In Germany, it's 30%.
No, but if we'd gone down to 19, that would have made a big difference.
I understand that, but let's put it in context.
But Charlie, I'm sorry to bang on about the immigration question, but I do think a lot of people are fed up. They know that Labour isn't going to do anything about the illegal immigration. It's pretty clear. They're going to be very liberal on this. But the Conservative Party have been completely useless when it comes to that too. And they've signed us up to, you know, the net zero agenda and so on and so forth. I think it is quite hard for people to sometimes see a difference. And with Liz Truss having completely collapsed in terms of her new radical economic strategy, I'm not surprised so many people feel completely
It's
homeless.
2 years to the next election. Let's just calm down. There's time.
OK, well, calm down. We'll all take a breath. Everything's going to be fine. But, I mean, we haven't seen this type of polling for years.
Well, I think the key thing, and you're absolutely right, Emily, but the key thing that I think you picked up upon at the start is that nobody has seen what Keir Starmer has to offer. So the scrutiny has all been on the Conservative Party. It's all been on the Conservative government, rightly so. Some unforced errors of our own doing. Those need to be corrected. But when it comes to issues like the NHS, when it comes to dealing with the backlog of cases in our health sector, in the criminal justice sector, when it comes to dealing with illegal immigration, we're not hearing anything from the Labour Party apart from nationalisation of our railways that we've just heard this evening. So what is the offer that Labour have to put forward? They have got no answers for the country. So yes, the Conservative Party and the government is in a bit of a pickle, but they've got a new Chancellor to see a new course through, a change of direction that will rejuvenate the party. But they are the right party for government.
We have to go, sadly, we have to finish this discussion there, but we'll come back to things. I think hopefully you're right, and we're just in a little bit of a pickle, and everything's going to be all right. Let's not throw our prams, our toys out of the pram. It's all going to be OK. Anyway, thank you, Charlie, for coming into the studio. Next, all this political and economic turbulence could lead to a fall in house prices, which is good for some of us, I think, anyway, but it might be a bad thing for others. We'll get into that after the break.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live with me, Emily Carver. So we're going to have a look at some of your responses to our discussions tonight. Chris says, I think Ben Wallace should be Prime Minister right now. OK, that's one opinion. I hadn't even considered Ben Wallace to be Prime Minister, but I guess there have been reports out today that that could be an option. Corinne says, Liz has lost and Hunt is hugely disliked by the people of this country. Both are Remainers. A third of Tory MPs want Rishi. There are two Tory parties within the Conservative Party. This is the time for a birth of a new party. So an election, in my opinion, would deliver a brand new future for the people of this country. Who would you like to see running a new party? I mean, it takes a lot to start a new party and actually get votes. I mean, we've got the Reform Party, we had the Brexit Party, we had UKIP before that, we had... can't think of any others at the moment. Change UK, which was a massive flop. That was the one that wanted to campaign to get us back into the European Union, I believe, and took a lot of the Labour and Tory MPs who were pro-Remain, and they all lost their jobs. So not another Change UK. But I do think you're right. I do think we need some kind of change, and perhaps the Tories in opposition is what they need to sort of recalibrate, although I'd prefer to see them in office, to be honest. Marge says, last year Boris had an 80-seat majority and looked invincible. Now we're wondering if the Prime Minister can make it to Christmas. As someone said, a week is a long time in politics. I think things will change despite the media pack. It is absolutely crazy how things can change quite so rapidly. It could be that by next month things have completely settled. Everything's hunky-dory, we've all calmed down, we've got used to the interest rates going up a bit. No?
No. I don't think so.
No?
I'm more optimistic.
You are optimistic,
yeah,
yes.
I
I do
by
like your
nature.
optimism.
Yep.
Perhaps I'm being a bit too, all over the place. Perhaps I'm sounding like the rest of the hysterical mainstream media.
We're still the 5th richest nation in the world. Let's not forget that.
Well, we don't want to be the 6th.
Well, no, but I mean, let's put it in context.
Now we're hiking up corporation tax. That's not going to be a good thing.
And lowest in the G7.
That was one of the things that I thought would... That was one of the things that I thought would actually give our economy a nice boost, not hiking it up anyway. Next. Are we facing a housing slowdown in this country? The Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors says that, although prices are still rising, there are warning signs which suggest that could soon change. The number of people struggling to pay their mortgage is forecast to hit a 15-year high, and house sales in September were at their lowest level since the pandemic was at its height. Who better to tell us more about this than the former Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors Residential Chair, Jeremy Leaf? Who better?
Thank you. What an introduction. Thank you so much.
I know that was. There were a lot of words there to get out. Lots of words, particularly with the chartered surveyors.
Yeah.
So tell me, what's going on in the housing market? Are we heading for a
I wish
crash?
I knew.
I want to know. I want to know when to buy a flat.
Well, I would say the market's definitely paused, there's no question. Like a lot
As
of
in,
businesses.
there are just fewer transactions going on.
There's fewer transactions, there's less demand, and there was a reaction. When the mini budget came out and interest rates started going up, there was a reaction. People pulled out of deals and they were very nervous about things. But after a few days, people came back to the market, they came back to us and they started saying, well, if we can negotiate a little bit, or maybe we're jumping a bit too quickly. So it has settled down a bit since then, but the new business is struggling a little bit, but certainly existing, hanging in there.
Yes, because people say, I've seen, headlines, we see this all the time, oh, house prices are set to crash by 15%, some were saying 30 to 40%. How could that possibly ever be the case? Because at the moment, and for many, many years, we just simply haven't had the supply to meet demand. So prices could go down for a little bit, but they're going to go back up again, surely.
It's like so many businesses, you see these big headlines, but actually, I work in this business 25 years, 7 days a week. It's not what it is on the ground, what you're reading in the papers. It is quieter than what it was, but it's certainly people still have to move. There's always reasons for why people have to move. So, and the banks were much more cautious this time around than they were the last time we had a slowdown similar to this. And so that's probably meant it hasn't happened as quickly, or is unlikely to happen as quickly as some people are suggesting.
Now, the Bank of England has said that they'll continue to raise interest rates. Some people say too little, too late. Others think this has been presented as disastrous, of course, in terms of people's mortgage repayments. What do you expect to see in terms of people not being able to pay?
Well, what we really want to see is stability now. There's been too much volatility, and we need to see markets calming down, inflation, interest rates and so on. And when we see a period of calm, confidence is such a big factor in any decision-making, particularly when you're buying a home. And people want to know that their property is not going to be a lot lower, and that they can take a fairly long-term view about what they're buying and the price they're paying.
If you were me, so buying a first home, hopefully at some point soon, would you wait?
I would
see things out.
Markets change so quickly, and they vary so much where you are and where you're looking. We've seen some areas really holding up really reasonably well, and others, not doing so well. If you're looking for a flat now, take your time, look out there, check on the prices, see what's actually shifting rather than asking, and then make a decision based on that.
The thing is, we've got so used to having interest rates so low that it seems unfair almost to have to sign up to a mortgage that's a bit more expensive than it would have been only a year ago. But that's life, I guess. We can't just continue. We can't just complain.
But that's why it was good that the new Chancellor this morning emphasised stability. He repeated that word several times, and I think Mr. Leaf is confirming that's what the market is looking for.
So is it all about words? Is it about vibes? If you say stability...
It creates the right environment, because headlines don't always mirror reality.
I do think so, actually, because with the reaction to the mini-budget, the reaction on social media, between the journalists, between the media types, I do feel like it does make everything worse.
It does.
So
it's hysteria. And everyone talks about the market. What, Shepherd's Bush market? Who are these people?
The international market reacted the way it did, and the way it did was entirely logical and made sense.
And a lot of people made money out of that.
And the idea that the international money traders were looking on Twitter or like Facebook and going, "Ooh, better sell short" or something. They're much brighter.
Some
the market's
did.
much more sophisticated than that.
Some did, and they made money out of it.
Yeah, they made money out of it because they're smart and they know how the market works.
It certainly doesn't help in terms of whipping up hysteria.
I don't think it makes any difference. I think if every lefty on Twitter went out and said this is rubbish, blah, 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 it wouldn't have moved the markets a centimetre.
Certainly wouldn't. It certainly had a massive impact on the government's U-turns, that's for sure.
The market.
And
the market,
I think also the media pressure.
I don't think they would have
cared. I think it has a huge impact. I would like to see whether government policy would be radically different if social media did not exist, and I believe it would be.
I don't think it would be.
When it comes to housing.
Well, it does. You know, housing, people care about their jobs and their homes, and they're very important to voting intentions and strength of the economy. And certainly, some people say to me sometimes, "Oh, wouldn't it be great if prices came down? It'd be more affordable." Of course, it would be great if more people could get onto the housing ladder, and that's what we want to see more than anything is activity. Not prices, volatile prices going up and down. No one really benefits from that. But even if you have lower prices, it doesn't make it necessarily more accessible for first-time buyers, let's say, because their job situation may be more uncertain. Mortgage rate, the lending criteria might be trickier, and the climate is more negative, and the valuations could be lower. So it doesn't necessarily mean there'll be more stock available at lower prices.
Oh.
Sorry to say, sorry about your flat purchase.
It's a situation for first-time buyers, it seems.
Not necessarily. It could soften a little bit, and I'm sorry to, burst your balloon.
Burst my bubble. Well, we need to burst the housing bubble. There aren't enough houses at a reasonable price, at least.
The crazy thing is, Emily,
a lot of us want to live.
There are
a lot of people
dozens of empty houses in London that need people living in them.
Dozens? That's not going to help us.
Actually, it's in the thousands. I asked a parliamentary question on this. Literally empty, owned by foreign investors. So they need to be taxed heavily because these places are empty.
Yeah, but hang on. When I'm a multi-millionaire and I decide that I quite fancy, I don't know, a villa in Saint-Tropez or something, I want to be able to do that without being taxed,
I agree.
Anyway, that's a dream. That's a dream. But I think that's a bit of a scapegoat because while it's very annoying that people leave these buildings
It's more than annoying. These are people's homes. People could be living in them.
The problem is that we're not building...
You either want... but you want it to be a free market or you don't.
Well, that's a good point about the building. Because,
well, I'm not an ideologue, so...
But the good point about the building, Emily, because what we really lack, most people agree on, is there's not enough affordable housing to buy or to rent, for that matter. And what would be worrying me, or what is worrying me or concerning me at the moment, is what's going to happen in 12, 18 months. The entrepreneurs, the builders, the developers, even the housing associations are not starting to look in sufficient numbers for product which will be available then when we need it. So we have to deal with the pausing now, filling up the supply later.
Well, let's hope everyone's doing their jobs as they should be. Thank you very much, Jeremy. That was Jeremy Leaf, former Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors Residential Chair. Next, Just Stop Oil campaigners have hit the headlines again after throwing tomato soup at a Vincent van Gogh painting. Legitimate protest or a menace to society? I think I know what you're going to think. We'll discuss that after the break.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back. I'm Emily Carver, standing in for Neil Oliver tonight. Now, two Just Stop Oil protesters were arrested yesterday after throwing tinned soup at Vincent van Gogh's priceless Sunflowers painting, which is housed at the National Gallery in London. The painting is behind glass, but the incident caused minor damage to the frame, and the protesters, who subsequently glued themselves to the wall, today pled not guilty to causing criminal damage. I don't know how they pled not guilty. Presumably the cover, the glass cover on the frame meant that it wasn't criminal damage. I'm not convinced anyway. Today I'm joined by Alexander Adams, an artist who has written a lot about this topic. So, can I ask you, why do you think these protesters would have targeted this image, or just an image in general if you don't know why it's this one?
My guess is it's because the Van Gogh Sunflowers, which is perhaps the most famous painting in the country, perhaps, they targeted it simply because of its fame. It's extremely recognisable, it's much beloved, it's an icon of the National Gallery, and so they may have gone for it for that reason. They may also have chosen it because it had glass on it. They may have realised that if they had actually seriously damaged the painting, that there would be in a lot more trouble and there would be even less sympathy than there is now.
And they couldn't plead not guilty to causing criminal damage. Presumably they think the frame is fair game?
Well, that group has targeted paintings before and they've glued their hands to frames, but frames are often antique, they're often extremely rare and valuable in themselves. They can cost tens of thousands of pounds, even up to £100,000 for a really rare frame. So that is not incidental damage, it's like damaging a valuable piece of furniture.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to come back to you because apparently your mic is acting up. So we're going to have to switch to our next segment and then come back to you. So now it's time for this week's Great Britain. And tonight we're going to be talking to the Band of Builders, a national charity who provides support to members of the construction industry who face life-changing circumstances. The Builders unite to deliver on projects and provide emotional and financial support. Let's take a look.
What is Band of Builders?
I love it. There's nothing like it.
Band of Builders is totally unique. It's like no other charity in the country.
Why do I do it? Because it's nice to give something back. Plus, you never know, one day you might be in that situation, and I'd like to think that someone would do something similar for my missus and my kids if anything happened to me.
I'm delighted now to be joined by Gavin Crane, the Band of Builders CEO. Hello. Thank you for joining me this evening. So tell me a bit about the project. How did you get it started?
So Band of Builders formed in 2016 when our founder wanted to help a friend and colleague of his that had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. He took to social media to seek support from tradespeople to carry out renovations to Keith's home. And on completion of Keith's home in 2016, the will and desire was there to help more, and Band of Builders was formed.
That sounds like a very nice thing to do, to be honest. So tell me about some of the projects you've worked on.
Well, we've just completed our first in Northern Ireland, so we've now completed projects in all 4 nations, and they range from supporting tradespeople that may have been injured at work or are now suffering from illness to supporting the wives and spouses and children of members of construction also.
So what sort of injuries and life-changing circumstances have these construction workers had before you helped them out?
I can give you one example, Emily. We're currently on a project in Hereford where a builder had a fall at work. He banged his head, he was left paralysed. So we're making adaptations and renovations to the home of Martin to allow him better access throughout the property, into the property, and obviously provide as much independence as we can.
It's not something I've thought about at all, ever, how many accidents construction workers must go through. I mean, it's a hazard of the trade. I don't know if you have any stats on hand, but is it common that if you are a builder, say for 20 years, that you will have had, you know, several quite bad accidents over the course of that time?
Absolutely. I think we go through each day. I was a former tradesperson myself. Obviously, I now run the charity, but you go through each day hoping that you'll go home in one piece. And 50% of the construction industry are self-employed. They're small business owners. So when something goes wrong, there's not many places to turn, unfortunately.
Yeah, so what's next for the charity? Is it growing all the time? Are you getting lots of support?
We have some incredible support. We have hundreds and thousands of trade volunteers across the UK who give up their time and skills to support our projects. All of our projects are carried out by volunteer tradespeople. And we are heavily supported by the merchant and supplier and construction industry to support what we do.
So if people are sitting at home and want to help you and your charity with the construction workers, where can they find you?
Please check out bandofbuilders.org. We are across all the popular social media sites, and we're always seeking new volunteers to support what we do. Or you may know somebody from the construction industry that needs support.
Yeah, just a quick question just before you finish. Is there any, other schemes that you know of that have done something similar, or is this a very unique scheme?
As a charity, this is very, very unique, certainly in what we do and the adaptations and support that we're offering.
Well, thank you very much for joining us this evening. I'm sure people at home will have a look up your website and see if they can help out too. Thank you very much for joining us as our Great Britain this evening on Neil Oliver Live. So it's 7 o'clock. No, it's not 7 o'clock yet. We're going to be going back to our in-house. Is your mic working now?
I believe
your mic is working now. So we're going to be talking about that Van Gogh painting that got vandalised.
Yes.
Now, do activists, whether it's eco-activists or any type of activist, do they often focus their attention on artwork?
Yes, because it's a very high-profile target. Unlike the head of state or someone, it's a relatively easy target because it's not protected by security details. It's essentially a public place that you can go into, you can get quite close to it, and then all you need is some sort of object or just even a fist, and you can create serious damage. There was actually a campaign run by the suffragettes in 1912 and 1913, where they actually attacked artworks demanding the vote for women. And the only reason that campaign was ended was because of the outbreak of war in 1914, but it was actually a very high-profile campaign. And a painting in the National Gallery, the Rokeby Venus by Velázquez, was hacked by a woman carrying a meat cleaver.
Goodness me. You know, I feel very passionate about things that I believe in, but I can't understand the psychology of thinking that just because you feel passionately about one cause, that you would go and cause trouble in this way. I mean, it's just pure vandalism. And look at that, we were just watching them on the screen there. They're just young teenagers, naughty teenagers.
Why was the painting not protected by security?
Well, there's been a cut in the amount of money provided for security. So
it's always austerity that's to blame. It's always austerity. I think they're not heavy-handed enough.
Well, also you've got to be sort of relaxed enough to allow genuine viewers to look at paintings and to circulate. It's not possible to have a security guard next to every painting.
No, but couldn't there be a chap just sitting in the corner, just watching?
There was, but all it takes is sort of. But he has to sometimes.
Yeah, we don't want to be living. We don't want to be living in a world where our beautiful art galleries.
For a couple of minutes. It wasn't just seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they glued themselves.
Well, I don't want to live in a world where to go into a beautiful art gallery, I have to see 3 armed guards with AK-47.
Just a chap in the corner watching.
But Nick, we saw today pictures outside the Met Police HQ.
Yeah.
So, and now that I can't understand how nothing was done about that. They were pictured throwing huge amounts of yellow paint all over the main sign, all over the floor, just making a mess, essentially.
I'll just be brutally frank here. I really loathe stunts like these. I think they're really awful. There's many reasons why I don't like them. The Van Gogh in particular, I love art, and the idea that they would target art is terrible. And
a lot of people will find that offensive.
I find it offensive.
Yeah,
I find
just
it awful.
offensive.
But bringing in the Scotland Yard stunt, I think that, I'm speaking as someone who is a green to some extent, an environmentalist, and I would just like to distance myself as much as possible from stuff like this, because if the idea is to win hearts and minds and get people to, understand some of the issues that we face around environmentalism, I just can't think of anything worse than having a bunch of upper middle class pinheads just causing a bunch of mayhem and basically saying, you know what, if you're thinking about this and you're trying to understand this issue, just tune out if you're just not someone who has a trust fund and can just wander around just causing a bunch of stunts. That really just actually causes a bunch of hassle for working class people.
I agree, and I wonder how those protesters would feel if someone came with tomato soup and threw it at their home.
Well, what we've seen today as well, there's more. It's going on everywhere at the moment, this kind of action. We've seen in Fortnum and Mason's, in, Harrods, all the posh shops in London, the milk is back out.
Nick says,
the milk is back out. The vegan extremists.
Middle class, and most of them are white, comfortable backgrounds. If they had to go out and do a job...
Well, I apologise, because I am middle class and white, so I apologise on behalf of all these spoilt brats. I apologise on behalf of all spoilt brat, white middle class girls. From what they see, they probably went to school with me. Who knows? Adam. So obviously, these people, we've got the. If you think that the cost of living crisis and your cause is so important that it's essentially could be responsible for deaths in the future. Let's take the Just Stop Oil or the climate change activists. You're going to go to any means, aren't you? You're going to go to any lengths.
Yes, and I would say to a certain extent that the establishment is reaping what it's sown, because they have pushed environmentalism and talked about the climate in terms of a climate crisis. The language has changed. They've become much more strong. I think that you can only blame these people, these activists, for doing actually acting on what they've been taught by the establishment, by the schools, by the university, by the mainstream press, by the civil service who have backed up this. And this is something that was inevitable when they actually start taking things seriously and they start saying, well, we're just following through what you want. So that is why activism and artivism, which is art and activism combined, that is why this is a product of the establishment, and it's an extension of the establishment's values.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that's very true. They've been allowed to sort of get away with it. They've been encouraged almost by the narrative being the same among all of our public institutions that, that we're in a climate emergency, that we're in a state of hazard where everything needs to be done. And I'm very sorry for calling you Adam. Your name is, of course, Alexander. Yeah. I'm very sorry. Thank you very much for joining us on the panel this afternoon to discuss all these ongoing protests, particularly that... the vandalism on the Van Gogh painting that we saw yesterday, I believe. Now, we're going to be going to a break very, very shortly, in about 2 minutes. So thank you very much. We'll be going to the break now. Hello and welcome back to the second hour of Neil Oliver Live with me, Emily Carver. Now, coming up this hour, it's Baby Loss Awareness Week, and we'll be speaking to a couple who founded a charity which helps support people who have suffered the loss of a child. King Charles has reportedly wants to mend the rift that has opened between the royal family and Harry and Meghan. A royal expert will be here to tell us if she thinks he will be successful. We'll meet a man whose charity has saved the lives of thousands of dogs across Asia. And to end the show, we'll be enjoying some spooky Halloween cocktails. But first, here are your news headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Emily. Here's the latest from the GB Newsroom. The Governor of the Bank of England is warning that interest rate increases could be bigger than previously thought. Speaking in Washington, Andrew Bailey said a stronger response may be needed to fight inflation. The central bank is set to announce its next monetary policy decision on November the 3rd. Investors are widely expecting another hike in the base rate.
The MPC will respond to all this news at its next meeting in just under 3 weeks from now, just after the 31st of October. This is the correct sequence, in my view. We will know the full scope of fiscal policy by then. But I repeat what I've said already. We will not hesitate to raise interest rates to meet the inflation target. And as things stand today, my best guess is that inflationary pressures will require a stronger response than we perhaps thought in August.
Well, the Governor's comments come after a think tank suggested more than 5 million homes could face annual mortgage repayments of more than £5,000 by the end of 2024. The Resolution Foundation says the predicted increase follows the mini-budget, which saw banks pulling deals from the market. The average 2- and 5-year fixed-term mortgage rates are now at their highest levels since 2008. The Chancellor has admitted the government went too far, too fast in its push to grow the economy. Jeremy Hunt says his focus will be stability, but difficult decisions on spending and tax will need to be made to get debt falling. He has, however, promised to protect and help struggling families and businesses when he sets out the government's fiscal plan at the end of this month. The footballer Mason Greenwood has been charged with attempted rape. The Manchester United forward is due to appear in court on Monday, also accused of coercive behaviour and assault. The 21-year-old was first questioned in January over the allegations after images and video were posted online. The Crown Prosecution Service says all 3 counts relate to the same complainant. The number of people killed during a mine explosion in northern Turkey has now risen to 41. 110 people were said to be working at the site when the blast occurred yesterday. 58 miners have been rescued. The country's President, Erdogan, visited the area in northern Bartın province as funerals for some of the victims were held. An investigation into the cause is underway, initial indications suggesting there was methane in the mine. And hundreds of farm workers, food producers and environmental activists have been marching through central London. Members of the Land Workers Alliance are calling for sustainable farming. They say the government must maintain its environmental land management subsidy schemes and protect the UK's growing standards in global trade deals. We're on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Back now to Neil Oliver Live with Emily Carver.
Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live with me, Emily Carver. Now, Baby Loss Awareness Week concludes tomorrow, and we're going to talk now about the Mariposa Trust, which supports people who have lost a child at any stage of pregnancy, at birth or in infancy. The charity provides support services to over 50,000 people around the globe every week and works with the government and medical professionals to care for people pre, during and post-baby loss. I'm joined now by Zoe and Andy Clark-Coates, founders and trustees of the charity. Thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Thank you.
So, this is the last day then, well, the last evening of the Baby Loss Awareness Week. Now, have you both how did you found this charity yourselves?
Yeah, we did. So we founded it after we went through loss ourselves. So going back many years, I'd trained as a counsellor, never intending to use it professionally. Then we'd gone into the corporate world and delayed having children a while because we just thought when we chose to have them, everything would just happen easily, and you just don't ever prepare for loss, do you, when you decide to have a child? And then sadly, we lost 5 babies over the course of trying to have children.
Oh, my goodness.
So we've got 2 children with us and 5 heavenly children. And so because of that, we knew that something was missing and something new needed to be founded. And so that's why we founded the charity.
And how did you, I don't wish to pry, of course this is very personal to you as a couple, but how do you get over that loss? I mean, losing 5.
Yeah, you don't. And I don't think whether you've lost one or multiple, it ever gets easier or even harder, really. It's exactly the same every single time, this devastating, heartbreaking loss. And so whether a family has just lost one child or multiple, I think they'll tell you every one of those children is so special, so wanted, so loved. And so the pain is just repeated. And the grief is different for every loss, but it's just as agonising.
And it's not really something that, and this is where you come in, of course, with raising awareness, it's not something that we seem to talk about. I don't know if people feel some kind of, what would the word be? Not shame, but maybe a stigma or some kind of concern. It's a taboo. It's not something that people like to talk about necessarily, but it's something that clearly impacts more people than we know.
It does. In Britain, we're really, really bad at talking about death, full stop. And baby loss in itself is almost a stage on from that people don't want to touch it. They think, are we going to say the wrong thing? Are we going to upset somebody? Are we going to trigger them? And so people avoid the subject. And so it's only by charities such as ourselves who try and raise awareness and people actually speaking up. And it's great when celebrities and people in the public eye speak up, because actually people feel suddenly they're being recognised and acknowledged. There's an acknowledgement of what they've gone through, and it allows them to feel able to speak and to actually share their story.
And in terms of your activities, how do you help people who are going through this in terms of you raise awareness, of course, what else?
Yeah, so we raise awareness all year round. So Baby Loss Awareness Week, people always say, is it for the bereaved families? But actually, they remember their loss every single day. So it's about driving awareness nationally and internationally. And so that's a big part of what we do. But then we also do befriending one-to-one for anybody who's gone through loss. We do services of remembrance, and we hold those at cathedrals, minsters and abbeys all around the world, where people get a chance to gather together with people who have been through something similar to them, where they get to honour and remember their babies. Because often there's no funeral, especially for babies that are lost in miscarriage. And that's an important part of the grieving process, this recognition of a loss and people standing with you saying your baby truly matters. So we do that as an organisation.
That's so lovely, the idea that people will probably travel quite far to take part in something just to feel like you're with people who completely understand. Because I imagine it's hard. Because I imagine people who, you know, have a friend or a family member who's gone through this, obviously you'd be very sympathetic for the first few days or weeks or even months. And then at some point you have to stop talking about it and you don't want to bring it up. And it's not that the sympathy's worn thin, but there's nothing left to say. So having that sort of group dynamic.
Yeah, and I think there is a culture of you have so long to grieve here in the UK.
Yes, exactly.
And so usually that expires after about 3 months and people just expect you to get back to normal. Well, actually, you never get back to normal after losing a child. And in fact, you never get back to normal after losing anybody you love. It's actually you're a different person on the other side of that. You're changed and you're different. But one of the things that happens a lot with people who lose babies is a third of people will end up with PTSD. And that means their brain is really traumatised by the experience. And how you work your way through that is by talking about it. And that means you need to share your story over and over again. And as you said, it can be hard to share that story over and over again with family members. It can be hard to listen to the same thing. And that's when charities really do come into their own as well, where they can come to us and speak to people and keep sharing, because that's a necessary part of their journey.
and also people who know what it's like to go through loss. So they're not speaking to somebody who maybe has never experienced it themselves or only experienced it from a distance. They can actually speak to people who've actually gone through it, and there's a common denominator there between all parties. So that's very, very helpful for people. And as Zoe said, when they can then come along to the services and the different events that we do, it just puts them in a position of being able to be around people where no words need to almost be said.
Yeah.
Because everybody gets it, everybody knows, everyone's there for the same reason. And we've got one tomorrow night at Chelmsford Cathedral in Essex, which is a service for that region that sort of closes off Baby Loss Awareness Week for this year. And Baby Loss Awareness Week has been a great thing. At the moment, there is the International Wave of Light going on at this moment in time from 7 till 8 o'clock, where people light candles at 7 o'clock in their time zone all around the world, and the wave of light literally goes around for 24 hours. So that's an amazing thing that's happening at the moment. And once again, that's very much to try and bring recognition to baby loss and allow people to know that they're not isolated, they're not alone.
And how is it, Andy, in terms of, obviously, a woman carries the baby and will have a different experience to the father of the child. How is it for men? I imagine that men are even more loath to talk about this type of thing.
Yeah, it's really difficult. I think often men feel excluded from what is going on. So around 82% of men report the fact that they're ignored completely by medical staff when a baby loss is taking place. So they're often sidelined, they're often sort of almost sat in the corner of the room, and everyone ignores them. And I think most men and fathers and partners would say they want their wife taken care of. This isn't a thing of they want some attention, they want all the attention to be on their wife. But as then they go through the grieving process, it's really important they're actually able to express how they feel. And often partners will go back to work quite quickly, and because there's no, especially if you lose before 24 weeks, there's no parental leave, no bereavement leave at all. So people have to go back into the workplace, and often life can almost just restart again without people actually having that chance to fully express and to work through their feelings. And so, once again, as a charity, a lot of our work is making sure that dads are acknowledged. So we have a campaign, Dads Matter Too, to make sure the fact that people actually acknowledge what they've gone through and they get the space they need to be able to talk about their feelings.
Yeah, that must be so important.
It's so important.
Yeah.
One of the major thing that happens after baby loss is marriage and relationship breakdown.
Yes, yes.
So around 70% of relationships are said to break down within 5 years of a baby loss, which means it's one of the #1 reasons for marriage breakdown and relationship breakdown. And when you talk to those families, often it's not the loss itself that's actually caused that. It's because they're grieving differently. And often resentment gets really a major thing in their relationship, doesn't it? Because they're grieving differently and they can take it out on each other. And so that's why it's so important to get support, not only for individuals, but also for couples.
Well, thank you very much for talking to us about that very sensitive topic, but it sounds like you're doing huge amounts of great work to bring awareness and also bring people together.
Yes,
I think that sounds like a really, really valuable thing for you to be doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, next on the programme, a new book says Prince Charles is very keen to restore good relations between the royal family and the Sussexes. We'll be assessing his chances of success.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Hey!
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back to the programme. So, could King Charles become known as the Great Conciliator? Vanity Fair's Kate Nichol, a high-profile royal author, claims the King is, quote, absolutely devastated by what has happened with Prince Harry and is hopeful of a reconciliation. Speaking of high-profile royal authors, I'm delighted to be joined now by royal expert Angela Levin. Good evening, Angela. Thank you very much for coming into the studio.
Pleasure.
So tell me, is Prince Charles going to be this grand conciliator?
Well, I think if you are a parent, you can love your child very much, but you just don't like what they're doing. And I think King Charles is actually in that category. He would love the family. He likes his family. He loved his boys. And when Harry was younger, he got on with him extremely well, better than the young William. So it's been very, very painful for him.
But has there been enough tough love, really? I think if I had been behaving like Prince Harry, I probably would have been told off and put right by my parents. Has Prince Charles not... I wouldn't like to say has he not been a good father, but has he made mistakes perhaps along the way?
Well, every parent makes mistakes.
Exactly.
I mean, you judge them by the less number of mistakes they've made. There's not a perfect parent. But I think it's very difficult if you're a royal. You can't speak out, you can't answer back. If he's accused of something, he can't then publish it in the papers so that people know that's not true. A lot of what Prince Harry said absolutely wasn't true. We saw that in the Oprah Winfrey interview. There were at least 19 big errors in that interview. And so therefore you can't really trust him, because if he wants to say something to him, he might go out and sell it to one of the people that he uses to promote him. And that just can't happen. So he said his father was trapped, but the only reason that he is trapped is that he can't speak out against something that Harry has said or Meghan has said about him.
I can't imagine how frustrating that must be to see all over the media your own son essentially lie or speak mistruths about you and not be able to correct them, but such is royal life. What is going on with Prince Harry and Meghan? Give us the latest. I know that they've been struggling to get this Netflix documentary over the line. They've got this book coming out, potentially. We don't know exactly when.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting, actually, because just yesterday it was announced that Netflix doesn't quite understand what's going on either, because they plan to get it out straight after The Crown, so it's out before Christmas. However, they've discovered that Prince Harry, in his book, in his memoirs, is saying one thing, whereas he's saying something else in the Netflix documentary. So they don't know which way to go.
Do we know about what?
Well, I imagine that it's about his parents and his family. I mean, the
Goodness me, so let me get this right. He may well be saying something different in the book to what he's saying in the documentary on the same subject.
Yes.
Oh dear, it's not good, is it?
Maybe, you see, he wants to please his wife, as he did in the opera. Sorry to bring that up again. But when she said we got married 3 days before the actual big marriage ceremony, and Harry said, yes, it was just the Archbishop, Meghan and me. It turns out that it wasn't that, and he should have known that, because if you're marrying, you need to have 2 witnesses and it has to be in a proper place. And the poor Archbishop of Canterbury had to make an announcement that that wasn't true. I think when he's with Meghan, he listens to what Meghan says what Meghan wants, Meghan gets. You remember they said
like
that
a good
before
husband.
Coronation. Well, no, I don't think you want a yes man for a good husband.
No, you don't want a yes man. You don't want a yes man.
Yes.
Well, I was listening to Meghan Markle's podcast, just for research purposes, of course.
Of course.
And it's so clear that it will appeal to a certain type of young person who likes to talk about different ways in which people are victims, sort of social justice, likes to think that they're seeing the world in a uniquely progressive way. But to most of us, it's a bit of an eye-roll moment, isn't it?
Well, you see, Meghan seems to want to put everything about her in each of the podcasts. So it's actually quite dull if you've listened to several of them, as I have, because you hear the same thing, that she's a victim, she's a victim, she's a victim.
For so many different reasons.
For so many different reasons. And I think it's the same thing about, it's Meghan's truth, which is not necessarily the
I
truth.
hate this, my truth.
Well, it's not realistic. It's not a truth, is it?
No, it's not a truth. So what does this all mean for Prince Charles, all the latest news? We've been hearing that he may have a slimmed-down coronation. Will Queen Camilla wear this crown that's been controversial because of the diamond that was going to be in it?
Diamond.
What's going on with this coronation?
I think it's fine. I mean, there's bound to be a lot of discussion about it, and actually leaking things to the press is quite interesting because you see what the public want. I'm quite sure that the reaction to the Kohinoor diamond crown would actually make a difference, as will the people's enthusiasm for a ceremony that is wonderful, even if it's cut down, even if it's cheaper, even if there's not so many people there, and it takes less time. You want to sort of please the public, and it's a bit like other people who want to sort of leak things out and see how they're taken before they actually do it. With the crown, I mean, Camilla, who I've spent a long time with, I've just written her biography, wouldn't care less what crown she wore. She wouldn't care at all, because she's not that type of woman that I must have.
Perhaps I'm ignorant, but I didn't even know that she would wear such a crown.
It's a consort crown. If, once you're the Queen, then you're allowed to wear a crown.
Then you wear such a magnificent-looking crown.
It's 105 carat, which makes it one of the most large diamonds in the world. But it has a little clip that you can take it off, so you can put something else in. But Prince Charles wanted her to wear it because his grandmother wore it when she got married, and there's a very nice link there. However, just after Brexit, they've been doing negotiations with India for a very big deal.
Yes.
And the Indians feel it's still theirs. It doesn't belong to the UK. So you've got to tread very carefully.
Well, I understand there are many, many claims to this particular diamond beyond India.
Pakistan.
And it goes back and back and back. It seems it's been stolen or passed hands many, many, many times before. I'm just going to speak to the rest of my panel here. Do you think that Prince Charles is going to lead the royal family into... is there going to be an element of decline? If he's looking towards having a slimlined coronation, what else?
I don't think
even more of a step back from public life?
I don't think it's a bad thing, actually. I don't think actually modernising the monarchy is a bad way to go. I think there were concerns around Charles. Would he step into it and how would people accept him? But it seems that it's gone extraordinarily smoothly. People have just accepted him as king. I think that's great. I think so far he's done a great job. I think, if he wants to if he wants to bring the grandiosity of it down a bit, I'd probably be in favour of it. Maybe other people would think differently, but that's how I'd feel about it.
You like your bling?
Well, I hope that he's able to bring the family together again. I mean, Meghan Markle has lost her sparkle. I mean, she's a mixed-race lady. I thought she was going to be fantastic for the royal family, especially in the Commonwealth. And this rift, I think, can only be bad for royalty. But, time is a great healer, so hopefully they'll come back together again. I'm a great optimist.
People were also excited about Meghan Markle, and everyone says, oh, we were so excited. I was suspicious of her from the start, I must admit. Only because I'd seen Suits and I'd watched Suits boots, and I knew her from the, you know, the gossip magazines before, and I was like, oh God, this is trouble. But everyone at least pretended that it was going to be fabulous and all of this and all of that.
But the royal family...
Shame what's happened, Angela.
The thing is that they were there for the funeral, for their Harry's grandmother's funeral, and for the Jubilee, because that's part of the family. So there's a sort of essence element to it. But a coronation is actually part of royalty, which Harry said he disliked enormously and couldn't bear to wait until he got away from it all, and Meghan saved him. So I don't know that we'd be 100% sure he might be there. Also, some of their friends and trolls are very, very annoyed that the date, May the 6th, is also Archie's birthday. And they think it's outrageous and the day should be referred to him. Yeah, you can't believe it.
Oh, my goodness.
Actually, for a 4-year-old, as long as he's got presents and a cake, he couldn't care what day it is. So we don't know. There's a lot of sensitivity there. But I think that...
I think there's a little bit too much sensitivity with those two.
Yeah. But we'll have to wait and see. The trouble is, I think, for them now, they had no idea that... King Charles would be received, as you said, in such a positive way. And it won't make them popular if they attack him. So whether or not they can take the bits they want out from Netflix and out from Harry's memoirs, they're going to be in big trouble.
Well, it's the desperation for money, isn't it? They already have a lot of money.
I think it's all relatable, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because they've got their house for $14 million, but the people who live around them have got houses for much, much more. So in their area...
so they're the poor ones on the street.
In their area, they're the poor ones on the street. As we know, money is only flexible for some people, but not for others.
But I thought all they cared about was helping, people around the world and sending a message of hope, love and peace. But really, they just want to get a bigger mansion, by the sounds of things. Well, keep up with the Joneses.
They've got 16 bathrooms already, so I can't
16 bathrooms.
Why they now need a larger place. But they're interested in moving. I think Meghan finds it difficult to stay at anything for very long. It was one book. She was going to write lots. She's moved several times. She's just did one voiceover. I think she's still searching to find...
Well, we've got a spare room in West London if you want to tell her, we could fit her in. No, I mean, royalty is bigger than any individual, and I think Meghan and Harry will realise that as time goes on, because their brand will diminish. The royal family's brand will increase.
But they still get to keep that link, don't they, with being the Duke and Duchess?
Yes, but the more they whinge and complain...
They're clinging on, yes. It's a bit
But their newsworthy is based upon complaining. That's what is so corrosive, in my opinion.
Yes. Well, I look forward to reading your book. When is it out?
It's out 2 weeks ago.
Oh, it was out 2 weeks ago? Yes. Oh, you should have brought one with you. Well, I'll have to buy one on Amazon, as will people at home. I would quite like to know a little more about
There's a lot about Camilla. There's a lot. It's a very interesting journey for her to come.
Yes, I'm sure it is. Thank you very much for coming into the studio. Now, we're going to move on to a very sad anniversary. It's been 1 year since Conservative MP Sir David Amess was killed after being stabbed more than 20 times during a constituency surgery. Now, 12 months on, his friends and family are reflecting on his legacy and whether enough has changed to keep MPs safe. Ellie Costello reports.
It was a brutal killing that shocked the nation and indeed the world. On the 15th of October 2021, Sir David Amess, the Southend West MP, was stabbed more than 20 times whilst holding a constituency surgery. His death shocked the close-knit community of Southend, where Sir David had been an MP for 24 years. 1 year on from his death, Sir David Amess is being remembered for the man and parliamentarian that he was, but also for the legacy that he leaves behind.
He was quite simply the best bloke I ever knew. And a year on, I have to be honest, I still really miss him.
You don't make a lot of close friends at Westminster. You're naturally very wary. But I can safely say that I never once knew David to betray a confidence.
After Sir David's death, the Home Secretary at the time, Priti Patel, defended the working practices of MPs.
We live in an open society of democracy. We cannot be cowed by any individual or any motivation, people with motives, to stop us from functioning, to serve our elected democracy, but also recognising that there are safety and protection measures that we have to undertake too.
U-turn, this way.
And yet, significant safety concerns remain, as seen as recently as the Conservative Party conference just last week, when MP Michael Fabricant was accosted by a protester.
People must have a right to protest peacefully and democratically, to put their alternative point of view. But that shouldn't mean that people can be spat at or assaulted just for having the temerity to go to a party conference. And I think the police, as much as anyone else, need to learn lessons from that.
But Sir David's closest colleagues remain steadfast that he wouldn't want MPs to become distant from their constituents.
You cannot put some great distance between yourselves and your constituents, and you shouldn't want to, and he wouldn't have wanted that. It would have been the last thing he would have wanted. So I think there are things that could be done, but I don't think you need to be obsessive about it, because MPs must be among the people.
What I think is critically important is how MPs continue to do their surgeries, whether they do them over the phone or via Zoom or in person. We must defend the principle that a constituent that needs help can get hold of their MP one way or another, because that link between an MP and their constituents is absolutely fundamental to the British system. And we cannot allow terrorists or wicked people to break that link, because if we do, then the bad guys are winning. And David would never have wanted that.
Ellie Costello, GB News.
Lord Taylor, you were just watching that package there, Ellie Costello reporting there. Now, it's been 1 year since Sir David Amess was brutally murdered, essentially, by an Islamist terrorist. What have we learnt from that experience?
Well, first of all, I knew Sir David Amess. I knew him for 20 years. He wasn't just a man, he was a gentleman. Always had a smile.
He looked like such a gentleman.
Oh, fantastic. Always talking about Southend. It's got to be a city, and wanted my support. And just a very friendly man who cared about the people that he represents. I think we can't live in a cage. Parliamentarians need to have that link with the public. We can't hide away. For me, it's about faith, not fear. Fortunately, what happened to Sir David isn't a common occurrence. We have to learn from it and be vigilant, but we can't hide away. We're there to represent the public.
Yes, it would be a shame if that relationship between constituent and their representative was broken down off the back of fear,
yes.
Security fears.
Yes.
But I do worry about the way that we talk to each other. I mean, people always say this about the way politics is conducted. We see that MPs sling all sorts of absolutely nasty and disgraceful accusations at one another, calling them names, saying awful things. We see how the media interacts, how social media goes after particular individuals. Now, I'm not saying this was linked at all to the way we talk about politicians. This was an Islamist attack motivated by that. But the way we speak to each other in politics is not healthy.
I don't think social media has helped
I'd agree.
in this. But, you know, what you're doing on your show with the Great Britain, that helps, because it shows people that there are good people out there who want to make a difference. So for every bad person, I think there are many, many more good people. And often the people that commit these awful occurrences are mentally ill in some way. They're not typical.
And Nick, are we doing enough in terms of combating Islamism? Because this was an Islamist attack. I mean, moving on to a very different subject from what we've been discussing today, but it's important nonetheless, because, you know, every now and again when there is a terror attack, it goes to the top of the agenda. Yet people are still consuming these ideas, people are still getting radicalised behind doors.
Yeah. I would suppose I would say, what do you do? It's very difficult to combat radical ideas. I'd probably say, you know, there are think tanks, there are people out there that are trying to really look into radicalism, particularly radical Islamism, and how to break it down. You know, it'd be great for them to get more support. But it's very difficult, and I think in the current environment with social media, it's very, very difficult because it's very easy for conversations to get very toxic very quickly. What is the solution to radical Islamism could be, we live in a police state where we just crack.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly,
yeah.
right. So part of the price that we pay for living in a free society is, unfortunately, we sometimes deal with people who have very radical and kooky ideas that sometimes they take to a horrible extreme.
The price we pay for freedom, but clearly the government's anti-radicalisation approach is limited.
It is.
In its use, although it's better than nothing from what I can see. It seems to have at least notified us of people who have been susceptible to these ideas.
In terms of Islam, it's about liaising more with the local imams around the country, in the inner cities. It's education, especially from a young age.
Yes, where we can identify, within the community, the most extreme people. That's got to be.
Yeah, because the Prevent programme, which is the scheme that's intended to help find people who have been radicalised or are being radicalised, is often criticised whenever there's a false allegation made. One or two where something completely ridiculous has come up, like a kid who was looking at the UKIP website. I think their teacher sent them to the Prevent programme, which is absolutely ludicrous, and other times as well, confusions over Muslim children as well. But that's not to say we should just throw it out, I don't think, but perhaps there are changes that could be made there. Anyway, we're going to be moving on to a very different topic, but a nice one, I think. We're going to be moving on to a charity which has helped thousands of dogs across Asia, including some who faced being sold for human consumption. The Soy Dog Foundation, I think that's how you pronounce it, was founded in 2003 by John Daly and his late wife, Jill. They had noticed the high amount of strays in the city of Bangkok after moving there in the early 2000s and sought better conditions for the local wildlife. Their charity offers emergency medical aid to dogs and cats, and now the Soy Dog Foundation seeks to improve animal welfare across all of Southeast Asia and beyond. I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by the co-founder and president of this foundation, John Daly. It is John Daly, yes.
It is,
That is how I pronounce your name.
Yeah.
So, you went to Bangkok.
Well, Phuket, actually, initially.
Phuket,
Yeah,
you
initially
noticed
Phuket.
that dogs were being mistreated, that they didn't have a home.
Really, what happened was, my wife and I, Jill, went there to get married in '96 and continued going on a holiday there for a number of years. And one thing we noticed was the vast number of stray dogs. Nobody seemed to be doing anything about it. Each year, the problem was worse. You'd see dogs everywhere, every street corner, hairless, covered in, skeletal, and really in appalling condition. And nobody was really doing anything. It being a predominantly buddy society, humane euthanasia was even out. Some people would poison dogs privately and this sort of thing. So when we moved out there, we fell in love with the country and decided we want to move out there and put something back into the society we'd called home. And it was one area we saw that needed something doing. So that's what we set out to try and do, to, in effect, solve the stray dog problem in Thailand, which is a huge task, because you're talking millions of stray dogs. And beyond that, it lent to other countries in Asia. But we started, there was just Jill, myself, and a Dutch expat who had also just retired there. We took early retirement. And we started Soy Dog Foundation. Initially, it was just Jill and myself and Margot, three of us, and I think the first year we sterilised around about 1,000 dogs, which is fine, but not going to have a huge impact. But that year, 2004, was a remarkable year. Jill, my wife, she lost both her legs and nearly her life rescuing a dog from a flooded water buffalo field when she caught a rare disease. 3 days after being released from hospital, the Asian tsunami struck where we were, and her best friend was killed in that. So it was a traumatic year, and that could have seen the end of it, really. But no way Jill, who's, I have to say, she'd been passed away now 5 years ago from cancer, but was probably the bravest person I've ever known. Okay, I'm biased, but she was. She put up with huge amount of pain and discomfort wearing false legs in a tropical climate. But we continued. It was Margot who thought she became very ill and she left after 3 years. So it was just Jill and I. And then we gradually turned it, cutting a long story short, into what is now, of course, the we actually treat and physically treat more animals of any description than any organisation anywhere in the world. I mean, we sterilise, which is something you haven't mentioned, actually our main focus. We sterilise now over 17,000 dogs a month, and across Thailand, predominantly in Bangkok now. Phuket, where we started, which is now, you're lucky if you see stray dogs on the streets. The ones you do are careful. The problem there is solved. We've also eliminated rabies there, which is another thing we're doing. So we're focusing now predominantly on Thailand, but also moving into Cambodia and Vietnam. And the object is to eliminate the stray dog problem in a humane way. And we believe strongly that the programme we do called CNVR, which is Capture, Neuter, Vaccinate, Release, is what works. And we've proved it works. And that's what basically we're focusing on at the moment.
Wow, and it's no good, it's no life for the stray dogs themselves, but are they a danger to those living
No, I mean,
in the
a lot
area?
of people, you know, accuse stray dogs of all sorts, but generally speaking, stray dogs are frightened of people. Most dog bites that you see in Bangkok and elsewhere generally tend to be owned dogs because, unfortunately, they're not as well cared for as you would find in the West. They're allowed to free roam, and therefore somebody walks past the end of a drive, will run out, it's their territory, and maybe bite somebody. And also you get community dogs who are fed and therefore become territorial. Your actual stray dogs are generally frightened of people and will run away from people. That's why it's when Jill lost her legs, was after darting a dog, because you have to catch them, and then running into what was a flooded water buffalo field where she became contaminated.
Well, I was struck by just how animal-loving our population is in this country. The public is, when, of course, there were dogs that were transported back from Afghanistan that were in danger, and the vast, vast majority view, it seemed, was that this was an excellent thing to do, to use resources to bring these dogs to the UK to safety. We love animals, in particular dogs. So do you find you have huge amounts of support for what you're doing?
Well, I spend most of my time, obviously...
Yeah, how come you're in England?
I'm in England now. I've now retired, moved back to England. But I'm still working mainly for health reasons, but the reality is what I do now is all computer-based. It doesn't matter where I do it. So I'm more or less communicating with donors a lot. Because the reality is any charity, it doesn't matter what it is, you can only do as much as the funds you raise. And often fundraising is seen as a dirty word, but the reality is you need funds to be able to do whatever it is, whether it's cancer research, helping children or animals. And in this situation, you know, we have no high-powered executives. I mean, Jill and I were volunteers from day one. We've never received a penny. And we now employ over 400 staff. So it's a case of throughout Asia. And obviously we have to raise funds to pay for them doing the work they do, sterilising all these dogs. We're also, I mean, we were able to introduce the first animal welfare laws in Thailand, and we ended the dog meat trade in Thailand, and also now working on that in the Philippines and Vietnam at this time to try and end that, because people argue that, well, what's the difference between eating dogs and pigs or cattle or any other animal? But you have to realise that the reality is that there are no protection for dogs. They're not considered livestock. Therefore, the conditions that they are from everywhere, from the fact the way they're caught, stolen often from people's yards, pets, the way they're transported, to the way they're then slaughtered and treated is absolutely inhumanity. It's so inhumane, it's unbelievable.
I'm going to bring my panel in. I'm going to thank you so much for telling me about your charity. Have you ever been to Thailand, seen this stray dog problem?
But, you know, in politics, every dogma has its day. But this charity is above politics, and what John is doing is remarkable. It really is. They say a dog is a man's best friend.
Isn't it amazing? I would never have thought of stray dogs in Thailand, and then you find that there's a charity that's doing amazing work right at the roots, sorting out an issue that I didn't even know existed, but clearly is a massive issue, and you've made such amazing progress. Nick, are you a dog lover?
I like dogs, yeah. And I think, as you rightly landed on, you know, the English love their dogs. It's a very, you know, I can imagine getting huge support for this. And it sounds like it's great work, and I'm so glad someone's doing it.
Well, people often think you're trying to do, you know, oh, we couldn't. But the reality is we're trying to solve a problem that affects not only the animals themselves, because they have no, you know, it's not a good existence, but also local people as well. It's trying to solve an issue. And we continue to do that, and obviously we're having a big impact, that's the thing. And so that's really what it's about.
Well, that's what makes a good charity. It's one that someone might wish to donate to, is one where you can see actual real progress. It has a goal. Something is going to come from the money that you give, and you're solving a problem that's harming people or harming animals. So fantastic work. What book have you got with you?
Your last guest didn't give you one. I'm going to give you a book.
Yes.
This is actually, it's won the People's Book Prize winner for non-fiction. It's a book I wrote actually about Jill. So it's her life story. So she was a remarkable woman.
It sounds it.
And, you know, I was fortunate to spend 20-odd years with her. So that's for you, but do give it a plug if you want to buy it.
Oh, yes,
you can buy it.
You can do it.
OK, best place to buy it is actually on our website, which is www.soydog.org. Go to shop. It's £12. Buy it there, because then every penny of it will go to the charity.
Well, there you go. The perfect Christmas gift.
Exactly.
It looks very interesting indeed, and there are nice sketches of lovely dogs on the back too, so there's a good one for family friends who are also dog lovers, or who just someone who likes a good story, I imagine, a good tale as well. Now, after the break, it's time for Halloween party season, and a top cocktail maker will be here to tell us what you should be serving at such occasions. Join me after the break.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
On Mark Dolan tonight, how to think like a billionaire. We're joined by world-renowned self-help expert Mimi Bland on how you can improve your finances, your career and your relationships. It's an interview that might just change your life. On politics, will Liz Truss be out of power by next week, as some are predicting? Plus, reacting to tomorrow's papers, Olympic legend Chris Akabusi and reality star and plastic surgery aficionado Jess Alves. We don't do boring, not on my watch. See you at 9.
Welcome back. I've changed where I am. I've changed my position in the studio because we're going to be making cocktails. It's Halloween in just over 2 weeks' time, and if you're wondering what drinks you should serve up, then wonder no longer. Joining me now is top mixologist Jean Vital, and he has very kindly brought some cocktails in for me and my panel to sample. Good evening, Jean.
Hello, madam.
Thank you very much. What have you got for us?
So the first one we will try today will be a pumpkin espresso martini. So it's a little twist on the very famous classic espresso martini.
Great.
Favorite.
Yeah.
Why now in UK? And got a little pumpkin spice syrup to bring this Halloween feeling.
Lovely. It's not every day you have a lovely French cocktail maker come into the studio to show us how it's done. My martinis are my mother's favourite. Do you like a martini?
I've never had one.
Never had one?
Sorry.
Do you drink? No. Oh, dear.
Yeah, occasionally. Yes.
You can have the ginger juice. Nick, do you like a drink at least?
I do indeed.
Oh, good.
And I
Okay.
do enjoy. I wouldn't say I indulge in a martini often, but when I do enjoy it.
That's good. That's good.
Although I tend to stick to the old, gin and vermouth. So this will be a
You stick to gin and vermouth.
Yeah.
So what have we got in here?
So in this one, we'll go on with a classic base. So I'm using a very premium vodka,
Yeah.
French one.
Lovely.
We have an Italian coffee liquor, very
Lovely.
great product. I got some cold brew coffee, infused
brew.
with a little bit of vanilla inside, and I got a homemade pumpkin spice syrup.
Lovely. Is that also what they put in, pumpkin spice coffee?
Yes.
Pumpkin spice latte.
Let's say this one is a little bit more premium because I made it at home,
okay.
no additives.
It's not that cheap stuff you get at Starbucks.
Exactly. Everything is natural in this one.
Well, this is nice. I feel like people don't celebrate Halloween enough. Why not have some? It's all about the children, so why not make some cocktails?
Something for the
You know, I mean, we always talk politics here, and on Halloween we've got another budget coming our way. So you need a cocktail for that, possibly.
On Halloween.
On Halloween, yes. Which is probably a bit of a nightmare.
Well, indeed, yes.
So we give a hard check. So, you
Lovely.
get a very nice form.
So where do you work? Are you freelance? Do you have your...
I am freelance and I'm doing a lot of consulting there and there. I'm moving internationally as well. And I'm running as well a social media where I teach people how to do cocktail, was one of the first person to teach cocktail on Instagram, actually.
Oh, you do it on Instagram?
Yeah, of course.
There you go. What, so you post videos?
So basically, yes, there is some video about cocktail. Everything is very simple and very accessible to everyone. It's not complicated mixology what I'm doing. I want everyone to be able to enjoy drinks at home. Why now, if you go to many bars in London, in the top bar, everything looks inaccessible,
Like
so
£25 for a martini.
Tell me about it. Let's not go on that because I get very engaged about that,
You get very engaged? Yes, well, it's frustrating how expensive these things are.
I'm from Birmingham.
Yes.
I'm assuming you're not from Birmingham, from your accent?
No, I'm from south of France.
So near Birmingham, anyway.
Yeah, well, family is originally from Corsica, but I grew up in Marseille.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely, beautiful part of the world.
Yes.
And the best place for food and drinks.
Yeah, but Birmingham's better.
Although, in the south of France, it's the rosé that's...
Yes, we have good rosé, good food, very clean.
Clean food.
I mean,
not so clean cocktails.
Well, we are not a cocktail culture in the south anyway.
Now, is it possible to have a healthy cocktail?
No. Literally no.
Very honest.
I guess why would you want such a thing?
Yeah, actually, yeah. I mean, yes, of course. I got many people asking me, can we have something healthy? I just give them tap water, basically.
No, they have. I don't know if people at home will have seen, but they have in Sainsbury's and places like that, they have skinny mojitos, which presumably just have less alcohol.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Less alcohol, more expensive. So
thank
here we
you
go.
very much. Sorry to those at home who don't have a lovely espresso martini to enjoy with pumpkin.
Now, Emily, I'm in the House of Lords. This is purely research.
Okay, purely research.
Purely educational.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Cheers. Happy Halloween,
Cheers.
which is in 2 weeks' time. That's very nice.
Oh, thanks very much. I appreciate it.
It's got a kick.
You got a kick, yeah.
Very
That's
nice.
really nice. I just
No, it is
drink
really
all
nice. It's
now.
really
I
quite
think
good.
I need to research further. Can I research
You
further?
can research. You can have as many sips as you like. Now you're going to make us another one.
Yeah, the second one I will present you is made with tequila, actually. Margarita is one of the most popular drinks you can find in bars, and tequila is doing a comeback past 2-3 years now, you know. So with all those celebrities pushing this spirit back. So the one we will do, it will be very simple as well. We will use a good quality tequila, top range one. I got a super British product. It's an apple and cardamom shrub. So shrub are very popular around.
That looks
We
nice.
have like homemade ginger syrup and a little bit of lime to balance everything. I rim the glassware with a little bit of spice and cinnamon sugar to bring this little...
That looks nice. I like to have some sugary goodness on the rim of the glass.
I like this research. This is.
I like this research. It's very nice. Now, because we're a news channel, of course,
Yes.
and not just fun and drinks.
Absolutely.
I must ask you: have you seen any impact in your business? Of course, throughout the pandemic, things changed a bit, but at the moment, how's trade?
So basically, let's say there is some good and bad, let's say, happening right now in the trade.
Yeah.
Obviously, with COVID and Brexit, we lost a lot of people around. We are, let's say, struggling to staff venues. That is a bad point. But the good point somewhere, it's our job get reevaluated in terms of money and what actually we can bring. Yeah. Once upon a time, many employers were telling you everyone is replaceable. But in 2022, it's actually every company that is replaceable now, you know, and the staff is not that much replaceable anymore. So we have much more respect, let's say, from employers.
So you've won respect because you're no longer.
We are
there
not
aren't very many of you.
Exactly. So now.
Well, that's quite nice. There's more.
Yeah, it is interesting. Yes, exactly. But now as well, if you want to staff an operation, it will be more complicated, and many of those restaurants you have around, they can no longer, let's say, ask for cheap labor. You know what I mean? So it's just a bit
But
more...
it's one of the things that France does so well is really takes pride in hospitality. And I think that the British, they do sometimes, but not always. It's a respected job.
Let's say it's a profession in France.
Exactly, yes.
And where here it's more like a job, you know?
Yeah.
So, and people are doing that, waiting for something. But, I mean, it's 22 years I'm doing that now. I started as a chef for more than 10 years and switched behind the bar when I was working in Australia, actually.
Oh, in Australia. So we've got vodka.
So in this one, you have some tequila.